You didn't stumble here. You were pulled by an invisible thread through the static of your thoughts to this exact moment. Every struggle, every question, every exhausted attempt to make it work was a breadcrumb leading here. Because there is something inside you that knows effort is not the true currency of creation. It knows beneath the noise that the universe is not impressed by exhaustion. From childhood, you were taught that value must be earned, that anything worth having requires resistance. Work harder, push longer, stay louder. And so you did tirelessly, faithfully believing that the more you gave, the more the world would give back. Yet something inside kept whispering, if this is how creation works, why does it feel so unnatural? You've been chasing miracles through force when all along they've been orbiting you, waiting for resonance. The truth hidden in the quantum folds of existence is this: reality does not respond to struggle. It responds to coherence. When you stop wrestling with life, you become permeable to it, like water surrendering to its current. Your energy stops fragmenting, and reality finds no resistance in you. Consider how nature manifests. The sun does not strain to rise. The flower does not force its bloom. They move in perfect participation with invisible order. The same order pulses within you. And yet, the mind, conditioned by centuries of grind, refuses this truth. It says, if it's simple, it must be false. But the universe favors elegance. Complexity is human decoration on divine simplicity. So breathe for this moment. Stop performing and start remembering. The field is not testing you. It is waiting for you to tune in. Because the moment you stop mistaking struggle for progress, simplicity begins to speak. And in that stillness right here, right now, your reality starts to rearrange itself around your coherence. And from that stillness, something subtle begins to rise, a whisper beneath your awareness asking, why do we fear simplicity? Why does ease feel suspicious while struggle feels safe? Because you were raised inside an architecture of effort. You were taught that meaning must be purchased with sweat, that success requires friction, that ease is a sign you've missed something important. From the first breath, you were conditioned to trust difficulty more than intuition. But complexity is not wisdom, it's noise pretending to be music. The ego, terrified of irrelevance, invents elaborate pathways to keep itself busy. It insists that manifestation must be complicated, because if the process were simple, it would no longer be in charge. Complexity gives the mind a role, a throne, a kingdom of endless analysis. And so it multiplies steps, fragments stillness, and worships the illusion of control. You've seen this pattern. You start a practice, then instantly doubt if you're doing it right. You visualize once, then worry it's not enough. You feel a spark of peace, then rush to explain it away. Every moment of simplicity becomes another problem for the mind to solve. Like static filling the signal, the ego creates interference just to prove it's still important. In quantum terms, this interference is decoherence, the scattering of energy that prevents harmony from forming. When your thoughts say yes, but your emotions say no, your signal cancels itself out. The field isn't punishing you. It's simply mirroring back the confusion you transmit. Complexity scrambles coherence. It keeps the universe guessing which version of you to respond to. Think of light. When waves move in sync, they create a laser-sharp, unified, unstoppable. But when scattered, the same light becomes dim and weak. The difference isn't intensity, it's order. Your energy works the same way. Coherent thought cuts through reality like a laser. Scattered thought diffuses into nothing. The mind loves scatter because clarity dissolves it. Why does this matter? Because manifestation isn't a ritual, it's a broadcast. Every action, thought, and emotion is a frequency pattern When they align, creation feels instantaneous. When they contradict, you experience delay, confusion, and repetition. The illusion of complexity convinces you to try harder, to speak louder, to repeat affirmations until exhaustion. But in truth, the field doesn't need repetition, it needs resonance. Consider nature's effortless mastery. A river doesn't debate its direction. A tree doesn't study how to grow leaves. The universe doesn't take notes on how to expand. They simply follow the path of least resistance, the path of coherence. Energy always seeks the simplest route because simplicity sustains flow. Complexity burns energy, scattering potential like sparks lost in wind. Here lies the irony. Your deepest programming says value comes from effort. But physics whispers that efficiency is evolution. Complexity is the camouflage of insecurity. Simplicity is the language of intelligence. The more complex your approach, the less trust you display in the invisible order guiding all things. The more you simplify, the more that order reveals itself. So when you catch yourself layering unnecessary steps, chasing signs, forcing affirmations, over-explaining the mystery, pause. Notice the contraction in your body, the tightening of control. That's not intuition, that's interference. Every thought that demands proof is a static burst in your signal. The moment you let it go, coherence restores itself, quietly, like the rejoining of two separated tones. You are not being asked to stop thinking. You are being invited to think less violently, to allow thought to flow like water rather than collide like stones. When your actions emerge from inner calm instead of panic, the field listens differently. It recognizes clarity as command. Simplicity becomes precision. And this is the turning point once you remember that the universe responds to coherence, not complexity. The war between doing and being ends. You stop trying to force outcomes and start becoming them. You stop shouting and start resonating. The mind loses its throne, but you regain your universe, and as the noise of effort dissolves, what remains is rhythm, the quiet hum beneath all existence. You can feel it now, can't you? The subtle synchronization between your heartbeat and something far larger. That's not imagination. That's coherence, the invisible architecture that turns chaos into cosmos. Coherence is what holds the stars in orbit, what keeps music melodic instead of random. It's not control, it's agreement. In physics, coherence describes how waves move together in harmony, amplifying rather than canceling each other. When light waves align, they become a laser capable of cutting through steel. When your thoughts, emotions, and body align, they become intention capable of cutting through probability. Think of your consciousness as an instrument. When your mind plays one melody and your emotions another, the result is discord, vibration against vibration. The field around you, always neutral, mirrors that dissonance with confusion. But when you unify, when thought, feeling, and action become one current, the universe harmonizes instantly. The song becomes recognizable again. Science, too, has brushed against this mystery. Researchers have observed that the human heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in the body, measurable several feet beyond the skin. When your brain and heart rhythms synchronize, your entire system moves into resonance. Your nervous system stabilizes, your hormones balance, and your perception expands. Some call this heart-brain coherence. But beneath the biology, something deeper unfolds. Your internal field becomes a clear channel through which consciousness communicates with creation itself. The ancients described this state as prayer, meditation, or union. Modern language calls it flow. But names are irrelevant. The experience is identical, effortless clarity. Time softens, intuition sharpens, and the boundary between observer and observed begins to blur. You stop forcing, and reality starts responding like an echo to your inner tone. You've glimpsed coherence before those moments when everything aligns without warning. The call that comes exactly as you think of it. The opportunity that appears just after surrender. The synchrony that makes logic stumble. Those are not coincidences. They're coherence events, proof that the universe is listening, and you've momentarily tuned your signal to its native frequency. Yet sustaining this state feels slippery, doesn't it? Because the ego thrives on friction. It can't survive in the silence where coherence resides. So it invents doubt, distraction, analysis, anything to reintroduce noise. You think, maybe I need to do more, say more, plan more, but coherence demands less doing and more being. It's not laziness, it's precision. Imagine two tuning forks. Strike one and the other begins to vibrate without contact. That's resonance, one coherent frequency awakening another. Manifestation works the same way. When your inner vibration matches the pattern of your desired reality, the field cannot resist responding. It's physics, not fantasy. The fork doesn't chase the sound, it becomes the sound. But coherence isn't achieved through intensity, it's achieved through alignment. When you try to force it, you create turbulence. When you relax into it, alignment emerges naturally. The body knows this truth long before the mind admits it. That's why breath is the bridge, because breathing is the most immediate act of coherence available to you. Every inhale invites, every exhale allows. Each breath collapses chaos into order. What's remarkable is that coherence isn't reserved for mystics or scientists. It's an innate human function. Children live in it naturally, fully present, fully feeling, fully trusting. It's only when the mind learns to measure, compare, and control that coherence fractures into complexity. The journey back to coherence is less about becoming more and more about remembering what never left. So pause again. Feel the pulse in your chest. That's not just biology, it's the beat of creation itself. Whispering, align, and I will mirror you. Because coherence is not something you create, it's something you allow. When you return to that simplicity, the field recognizes its reflection and begins to rearrange itself accordingly, not tomorrow, but now. From coherence, a new clarity unfolds, the realization that mastery has never been about control, but about simplicity. You begin to see that life, like any great system, is self-organizing when interference ceases. Complexity, you now understand, was never sophistication, it was static. The deeper truth, simplicity isn't the absence of depth, it's the perfection of it. Watch how nature demonstrates this intelligence without fanfare. A river doesn't push against its banks demanding progress. It finds the path of least resistance and lets gravity sculpt its course. Lightning doesn't debate where to strike. It follows the clearest line between charge and ground. Every current, every seed, every galaxy obeys this same principle movement through ease. Why? Because simplicity is the signature of coherence. You've been conditioned to equate mastery with difficulty, to earn it. You thought you had to climb, strive, and struggle. But true mastery is the opposite. It's surrender so precise that the universe begins to function through you. That's the secret hidden in every spiritual tradition, every quantum revelation, every creative act that seems effortless. The artist in flow, the mystic in silence, the scientist struck by insight, all are experiencing the same state, the dissolution of resistance into unity. Simplicity, then, is not passive. It's participatory. It means aligning with the current rather than thrashing against it. When you release the need to force, you become part of the intelligence directing the flow itself. This is why effortless outcomes often feel miraculous. They bypass the ego's blueprint. The field doesn't require micromanagement. It only requires clarity, the absence of contradiction. Consider this when you over-control a process. You narrow its possibilities to the limits of your understanding. But when you allow simplicity, you open to the vastness of what your mind could never calculate. You felt this in your own life, those moments when things fell into place only after you stopped trying to make them fit. You called it luck, timing, or divine alignment, but it was simplicity reclaiming its throne. Quantumly, energy flows where resistance fades. The less interference in your emotional, mental, and physical fields, the faster intention collapses into form. Think of it as fluid dynamics. Turbulence dissipates power, but laminar flow smooth, unobstructed moves energy efficiently. Your consciousness behaves the same way. Turbulence is doubt, fear, and overthinking. Laminar flow is trust, clarity, and still presence. This is why simplicity feels so peaceful. It's not the absence of motion, but the precision of motion. You stop wasting force on resistance and redirect it into resonance. The difference between struggle and mastery is where your energy goes. One disperses it, the other focuses it like sunlight through a lens. The masters of manifestation, the saints of surrender, the inventors of genius, they all discovered this pattern. When the mind grows quiet, the field reveals its design. Einstein described it as simplicity beyond complexity. Rumi called it the silence beneath the noise. And in every case, the teaching was the same: clarity creates power. So when your ego says, "If it's this easy, it can't be real," smile gently, because that thought alone is resistance. The universe never demanded your exhaustion. It only ever wanted your coherence. And simplicity is coherence expressed as behavior. To live this way is to trust life's intelligence more than your conditioning. It means knowing when to act and when to allow, when to move and when to be moved. The line between those states becomes thinner with practice until you can no longer tell where your will ends and the universe's begins. That's mastery, not domination, but participation, not control, but communion. And when you finally reach this level of simplicity, reality ceases to feel like something you must manifest. It becomes something you are. And as mastery softens into simplicity, another illusion begins to dissolve the tyranny of time. You start to sense that what you call waiting is just the mind's way of organizing infinity. That clocks and calendars, though useful for the body, are irrelevant to the field. Manifestation doesn't move forward through time, it moves inward through coherence. You've been told to measure progress in hours and weeks, in deadlines and milestones. But the quantum field doesn't keep time, it keeps frequency. Every potential you could ever live already exists in superposition, layered like transparent images waiting for observation to collapse one into form. You are not traveling toward your future, you are selecting it through vibration. Consider how physicists describe superposition before observation. A particle exists in all states simultaneously. The act of observation doesn't create reality, it reveals which possibility you're resonating with. In the same way, your desired future is not waiting to be built. It's waiting to be tuned into. The instant your inner state aligns with its pattern, time collapses, and the future steps into now. This is why impatience disrupts manifestation. When you demand, "When will it happen?" you reinforce the belief that it hasn't. That statement keeps your vibration anchored in lack. The field merely mirrors your certainty. It's not here yet. But when you release time, when you embody the feeling that it's already done, coherence replaces waiting with presence. Time doesn't bring your reality closer, alignment does. Imagine you're tuning a radio. Every station exists simultaneously in the air, yet you only hear the one you match. Turning the dial faster won't make the signal arrive sooner. It only creates static. Likewise, rushing toward your manifestation distorts the signal. but stillness patient. Trusting stillness locks in the frequency until clarity turns invisible into visible. Ancient mystics understood this truth long before physics gave it language. They taught that enlightenment happens not through years of striving, but through moments of recognition, an instant where the veil of time lifts. Neville Goddard called it living from the end. He didn't mean fantasizing about a future. He meant embodying it as if it were current reality. In that embodiment, time ceases to be a distance and becomes a state of awareness. When you think, "It will happen someday," you create separation. When you say, "It is unfolding now," you create coherence. The difference is subtle but profound. One assumes linearity, the other assumes readiness. And readiness, not chronology, determines manifestation speed. This is why miracles seem to happen overnight. They don't violate physics. They transcend the psychological construct of time. When you reach a frequency that matches your desired outcome, it manifests in what appears as an instant, but that instant was always waiting for you to align. Picture this, a seed beneath the soil. You could call it dormant, but in truth, it's already in motion, organizing the conditions for growth. When the environment aligns, water, light, temperature, the sprout appears suddenly. Though its preparation was timeless, manifestation works identically. You are never waiting for reality. Reality is waiting for resonance. The paradox is beautiful. The less you measure, the faster it happens. The more you release when, the more life answers now. Because time, as you've been taught to experience it, is a translation device for consciousness. It slows infinity into sequence so your mind can comprehend expansion. But the deeper part of you, the observer beyond the clock, already stands inside every version of your future. To collapse time, you don't manipulate the clock. You dissolve the illusion of distance. You stop saying one day and start embodying this day. You stop rehearsing arrival and begin radiating presence. And as you do, the future you've been chasing turns around and recognizes itself in you. From the collapse of time emerges the next threshold, surrender, the place where all strategies end and alignment begins. If coherence is the song, surrender is the silence that lets it be heard. The moment you stop demanding that reality obey your timeline, you feel the universe begin to breathe through you. Surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the point where you stop forcing the river and start flowing with it. You see, control is fear disguised as responsibility. The ego believes that if it lets go, everything will fall apart. But in truth, it's the tightness that blocks the current, not the current that resists your grip. Think of gravity. The apple doesn't cling to the tree, begging to fall. It yields. It lets the invisible pull guide it toward inevitability. That's surrender, not giving up, but giving in to intelligence greater than the mind. The same intelligence that choreographs stars and seasons is the one orchestrating your timeline. When you release control, you align with it. But how do you know when to surrender? You feel it. Control feels like tension. The body contracts, the breath shortens, thought races. Surrender feels like expansion, a widening calm that arrives without explanation. The difference is palpable, and once you've tasted that peace, control feels like static you can no longer tolerate. In physics, resistance consumes energy. When a current flows through a wire, heat appears where resistance exists. The same is true of your consciousness. Every anxious thought, every doubt about timing, every desperate attempt to steer the outcome generates friction that burns your energy. Surrender removes that resistance. It opens the circuit so power flows freely again. This is why miracles often occur after exhaustion, when you've finally surrendered the illusion of control. The ego calls it giving up, but what really happened is that coherence returned. You stopped broadcasting interference, and the field could finally respond to a clear signal. It was never waiting for you to try harder. It was waiting for you to stop trying at all. Consider the way birds navigate migration. No map, no calculation, no external instruction, only instinct guided by magnetic fields. They don't force their path, they feel it. That's surrender. The intelligence of flight doesn't come from the wings, but from the invisible rhythm directing them. You too are wired with that guidance. The difference is you learn to doubt it. Yet, every genuine manifestation arrives through this space of release. It's not the command of "make this happen," but the whisper of "I allow this to unfold." When you say "I allow," you don't relinquish creation, you merge with it. You stop standing outside the universe asking, and start recognizing yourself as the aperture through which it expresses. This shift transforms effort into participation. Imagine dancing with a partner far more skilled than you. When you stop anticipating the steps and start feeling the rhythm, your body moves in perfect harmony. That's what surrender feels like, being led by something graceful, precise, and endlessly aware. The irony is, surrender gives you more power than control ever did. Control limits you to what your mind can imagine. Surrender opens you to what existence can imagine through you. You move from designer to participant, from architect to instrument. The music of creation plays itself through your willingness. But surrender isn't a one-time act. It's a practice, a rhythm, a daily recalibration. Each moment of doubt becomes another invitation. Can I soften here? Can I trust the current again? Every yes collapses another layer of resistance until flow becomes your default language. And when that happens, reality stops being something you chase. It becomes something that happens through you. You stop worrying about outcomes and start marveling at orchestration. You stop shouting into the field and begin listening to what it's already saying. That is the paradox of surrender. When you let go, you don't lose control. You gain coherence. You stop falling apart and start falling into alignment. And from there, life moves with a grace so effortless, it can only be described as sacred. From surrender comes remembrance, the realization that you were never disconnected from creation, only distracted, that the field you once tried to reach was never out there. It was folded within you, waiting for recognition. When you stop struggling to manifest, what returns is memory, the awareness that you and the field are the same consciousness playing both dreamer and dream. Physicist David Bohm once described reality as an implicate order, a hidden layer of existence where all things are already enfolded. The physical world, he said, is merely the unfolding of that order, a holographic projection of infinite possibility. You don't create from nothing. You remember what's already encoded in the deeper pattern. Manifestation is remembrance in motion. Imagine holding a hologram. Even if you shatter it into pieces, each fragment still contains the entire image. Your consciousness functions like that. Every thought, emotion, and moment carries the blueprint of the whole. When you reach coherence, that fragment becomes aware of itself as the entire field. That's remembrance. The fragment remembering it was never separate from the total. This remembrance changes everything. Suddenly, manifestation stops feeling like construction and starts feeling like revelation. You no longer chase outcomes, you uncover them, like brushing dust off a buried sculpture. What you seek emerges as you clear interference. Simplicity reveals what was always true. You were never manifesting a new future. You were unveiling one that was already chosen. You can feel this when synchronicities multiply, when life mirrors your thoughts before you even voice them. It's not the universe suddenly cooperating, it's you aligning with its constant cooperation. Each coincidence is a flare from the deeper order saying, "You're remembering again." But remembrance also dismantles identity. The ego resists because it thrives on separation, me and the world. self, and source. Yet, in the field, these distinctions blur. The observer and the observed merge. This is why awakening can feel disorienting. The familiar boundaries dissolve, replaced by spacious awareness. You realize you are not a person trying to influence the universe. You are the universe expressing as a person. In that realization, fear loses its foundation. Fear can only survive in separation. But if everything is part of one field, what could truly be lost? Even endings reveal themselves as rearrangements of the same consciousness. The field doesn't delete, it transforms. Death, failure, delay, all temporary misreadings of a single unfolding pattern. When you remember this, peace becomes instinct, not effort. Science gives language to this truth through the concept of morphic resonance, the idea that patterns once established in the field continue to influence future formations. What you call intuition may simply be the memory of coherence echoing through you. Every act of love, trust, or alignment strengthens that resonance, making it easier for others and for your future self to access. This is why remembering your connection is service. It ripples outward, teaching reality how to remember itself. When you embody remembrance, creation feels intimate again. You no longer ask for signs because life itself becomes the sign. You notice how everything around you responds to subtle shifts in your energy conversations, timing, even weather patterns reflecting your internal state. This isn't delusion, it's participation. You've remembered your role in the choreography. The more you live from this awareness, the less you seek validation. You stop needing the universe to prove itself, because you are the proof. You realize that miracles were never exceptions to the rule. They were the rule glimpsed without interference. And once you see that clearly, simplicity becomes sacred again. Because remembering is the highest form of awakening, not learning something new, but reclaiming what was never forgotten, only ignored. Every act of alignment is a homecoming. Every coherent thought is the field remembering its own face. And in that reflection, you remember yours. And from remembering, awareness sharpens. You begin to see that consciousness doesn't merely witness creation, it calibrates it. The observer doesn't stand apart from reality. The observer is the tuning fork that gives it form. Every glance, every expectation, every silent assumption is an act of selection in the quantum field. Observation isn't passive, it's participatory. Quantum theory hints at this paradox. A particle exists in probability until observed. Then it collapses into a definite state. The observer effect isn't science fiction, it's the physics of awareness. But what most miss is that observation isn't just what you look at. It's how you look. Your emotional tone, your belief, your focus all sculpt the waveform into matter. In simple words, reality listens to the quality of your gaze. Think of resonance as a cosmic feedback loop. When you hold an image in consciousness with conviction, the field vibrates accordingly. When that vibration sustains, probability collapses into experience. This is why doubt delays, it breaks resonance mid-sentence. The field never stops listening, but it can only amplify what remains stable. You've seen this dynamic countless times. When you're deeply certain about something, life seems to rearrange itself to confirm it. The friend calls exactly when you think of them. The opportunity aligns without warning. These aren't coincidences. They're coherence responses, your observation resonating into form. The universe doesn't require effort, only steady witnessing. But most people observe like flickering lights. Belief on, belief off, trust on, fear on. Their field never stabilizes long enough for reality to respond coherently. They ask, then analyze, then doubt, then demand proof. That oscillation scatters energy. Observation becomes interrogation. The field, infinitely precise, reflects that fragmentation. To cultivate resonance, you must become still enough to observe without resistance. This doesn't mean suppressing thought. It means softening the charge behind it. Observation without attachment is pure coherence. It's seeing the seed and knowing the flower is inevitable. You don't rush to pull the petals open, you witness them unfold. Imagine holding a crystal glass near a violin. When the right note is played, the glass vibrates, sometimes even shatters under resonance. Not because the sound forced it, but because the frequencies matched perfectly. That's what happens when consciousness and creation meet in alignment. The observer doesn't break reality. It releases it from uncertainty. But resonance demands trust in silence. Many grow restless when manifestation pauses, mistaking stillness for stagnation. Yet the most potent frequencies are inaudible. A tuning fork hums quietly long before the room begins to sing. The observer's role is not to perform, but to sustain, to hold awareness steady enough that reality recognizes the signal. This is the secret behind prayer, meditation, and visualization, not the words, not the images, but the resonance they generate. When your inner state vibrates in harmony with what you observe, creation becomes instantaneous. You stop convincing the field and start conversing with it. The dialogue becomes effortless, continuous, sacred. Even science now acknowledges that observation changes outcomes, not by magic, but by measurement, by interaction. Consciousness touches reality and leaves fingerprints. The same happens in your daily life. When you focus on peace, your biology shifts. When you dwell in fear, your cells respond in kind. Observation begins at the molecular level and ripples outward, structuring experience. So ask yourself, what are you observing most often? Worry or wonder, lack or abundance? Every repeated observation becomes a loop, a feedback cycle that defines your world. You are not trapped by circumstances, you are stabilized by attention. Where focus goes, form follows. To master resonance is to master creation. It's realizing that reality isn't a stage where you play. It's an echo chamber that sings back whatever note you sustain. When observation turns coherent, time and distance collapse. The future folds inward, the improbable becomes ordinary, and the universe aligns to your still gaze. You don't have to push to change the world, you only have to look clearly enough to let it change itself. That is the power of resonance. That is the sacred role of the observer. And now, after seeing how the observer shapes creation, you're ready to translate awareness into embodiment, to walk as coherence rather than chase it. Because understanding is only half the equation. Embodiment is the true activation. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you know, it responds to what you are. Let's ground this into practice, not steps or rituals, but shifts. 3 simple pivots that transform complexity into clarity, turning manifestation from theory into lived truth. The first shift, precision over control. Control is the ego's favorite disguise. It feels powerful, but it drains coherence. You've been trained to demand specifics from the universe, the when, the how, the who. Yet every demand constrains the field's infinite intelligence. The quantum doesn't need instructions, it needs direction. Precision is that direction. It's holding a clear vision without strangling it. It's saying, "This is my frequency," then letting the universe arrange its geometry. Imagine aiming a beam of light. You don't chase photons or steer each particle, you simply focus the lens. That focus is precision. When your vision is sharp but your grip relaxed, coherence flows. The universe knows where to aim. Control says, "It must happen this way." Precision says, "I already feel it this way." The former fragments, the latter aligns. The second shift, timelessness over schedule. You already know time collapses in coherence. When you anchor your manifestation to a deadline, you create resistance. The statement by next month implies not yet. The field responds accordingly. Timelessness isn't ignoring time, it's transcending dependence on it. It's moving as though the outcome is present now, because quantumly, it is. Try this experiment instead of asking when something will happen. Ask, what does it feel like now that it already has? Let your body answer before your mind interferes. That feeling, that embodied certainty, is the frequency of readiness. Time bows to readiness. You've seen this in moments when desires manifested faster than logic allowed. You weren't counting hours, you were immersed in state. That immersion collapsed distance. Chronology bent to coherence. The third shift, trust over repetition. Repetition can reprogram. Yes, but beyond a point. It signals doubt. When you repeat your request endlessly, you're broadcasting maybe the field didn't hear me, but the field always hears. The challenge isn't sending the signal, it's sustaining the resonance. Trust means tuning once, then staying tuned. Think of a radio station. You don't keep twisting the dial after finding the song. You enjoy the music. In manifestation, enjoyment is maintenance. When you relax into trust, the signal stabilizes. That's when synchronicities multiply. Not because you're forcing them, but because you've stopped interrupting them. Together, these three shifts, precision, timelessness, and trust, rewire the way you exist in creation. They strip away unnecessary technique and return you to the essence of coherence. To embody them, practice awareness like breathing gently, rhythmically, without strain. Every time control rises, exhale. Every time impatience whispers, pause. Every time doubt screams, smile. Each soft release is a micro-collapse of resistance. Soon, you'll notice a pattern. The more you simplify, the faster reality aligns. The field isn't slow, it's exact. It mirrors the moment you become unconflicted. Precision brings focus. Timelessness dissolves delay. Trust locks the signal. These are not metaphors. They're instructions written into the physics of consciousness. Coherent frequency amplifies itself, just as two identical waves double in strength when aligned. Your field works the same way. Every act of trust reinforces the last until certainty becomes natural. Let simplicity be your method. Let coherence be your practice. And let every breath remind you manifestation is not a chase. It's an attunement. When your signal is clear, the universe cannot help but answer. Because at this level of understanding, effort is irrelevant. Only resonance matters, and resonance pure, unwavering. Embodied is what makes the quantum mechanical become miraculous. And from these shifts, precision, timelessness, trust, a revelation blooms. You are not using the quantum field. You are transmitting it. You are not a visitor in creation's circuitry. You are its signal. The realization strikes like quiet lightning. Manifestation isn't something you do. It's something you are doing already, every moment, unconsciously or intentionally. Every thought, every tone of feeling, every subtle gesture radiates into the field as instruction. You have been broadcasting since the day awareness opened its eyes through you. The only question is, what frequency have you been sending? Coherence or confusion, trust or fear? The field doesn't judge, it mirrors. It translates your being into circumstance with mathematical fidelity. So imagine for a moment that your body is the transmitter, your consciousness the current, and your environment the feedback screen. If the picture flickers, you don't blame the screen, you fine-tune the signal. Manifestation works the same way. The external isn't malfunction, it's feedback. Every delay, every loop, every frustration, is your universe whispering, adjust your signal. This is the truth few dare to integrate, because becoming the broadcast requires full ownership. There's no longer an outside force to beg or blame. You stop outsourcing power to luck, timing, or divine approval. You realize that divinity has always been localized, streaming through you in real time. The quantum field is not a realm to enter. It's the awareness through which you perceive. This shift feels both liberating and humbling. You recognize how every subtle contradiction inside you once created static in the field. Every unspoken, "I'm not ready" became delay. Every quiet, "I don't deserve this" distorted clarity. The field didn't punish you, it obeyed. It responded to your dominant broadcast, faithfully and without error. But coherence, that rare, luminous simplicity, changes everything. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions synchronize, the field stabilizes, reality organizes around that still frequency like iron filings around a magnet. You don't attract what you want. You stabilize what you are. Picture this alignment as light condensing. At first, it's diffuse random photons scattered across space. Then intention gathers them, emotion fuels them, belief focuses them. Suddenly, the glow becomes a laser, coherent, directed, unstoppable. That's you. As the broadcast, the universe doesn't resist such clarity. It rushes to cooperate. Every great mystic hinted at this secret. They called it speaking the word, commanding reality, or being still and knowing. Beneath their language was the same phenomenon, the human as a living transmitter of creation. You don't manifest outcomes. You translate infinite potential into specific frequency. You are the midpoint between unformed and formed, the bridge between wave and particle. To live as the broadcast is to let alignment become identity. It's not something you switch on during meditation or ritual. It's who you are while cooking, walking, breathing. Every action becomes a transmission of coherence. Every breath declares, "I am tuned." At first, this practice feels deliberate. You must pause, notice, recalibrate. But soon it becomes natural. The static fades, replaced by quiet authority. Life bends effortlessly because resistance no longer exists. Even challenges lose their edge, revealing themselves as retuning opportunities. The broadcast never fails, it only refines. This is the hidden mastery of simplicity. The power that looks like stillness but moves worlds. You realize there's nothing left to chase, nothing to demand, nothing to prove. The signal is clear, the field is listening, and creation, ever responsive, begins rearranging itself to match your coherence. Now you stand where seekers once searched inside the very truth they pursued. You've become the instrument and the song, the transmitter and the transmission. Simplicity was never passive, it was genius disguised as grace. Because once you become the broadcast, reality doesn't follow you, it becomes you. And now, as the broadcast settles into silence, a deeper stillness rises to meet you. You can feel it, that subtle hum in your chest, steady and ancient, older than the body, older than the stars. It's not an ending. It's the echo after revelation, the space where knowing becomes being. You've walked through illusion after illusion, effort, complexity, time, control, and found simplicity waiting behind them all. What began as theory has become truth. The universe was never withholding anything from you. It was only waiting for you to quiet the static. The moment you stopped chasing outcomes and started inhabiting alignment, the field responded, because it always does. Now the question is not, what do I want, but how still can I remain while it unfolds? This stillness isn't passive, it's luminous. It's the power that lets galaxies spin and breath move through lungs. It's the intelligence that grows forests and heals wounds without instruction. When you match that rhythm, life stops feeling like something to manage. It becomes something you remember. Take a moment here, breathe in the simplicity. Feel the world soften around you, as though reality itself is exhaling. You are no longer the seeker, but the signal. No longer trying to become the frequency, because you already are. Everything you've ever desired was never a destination. It was a mirror, reflecting you back to yourself, waiting for you to recognize your own coherence. This is the quiet truth beneath manifestation. You were never meant to struggle your way into creation. You were meant to remember you are creation conscious, aware, infinitely responsive. When you live from that remembrance, synchronicity stops surprising you. Flow becomes familiar. The miraculous becomes the mundane rhythm of existence. So, as this message fades, carry its resonance. Let it dissolve into your movements, your words, your breath. Speak gently to yourself. Observe without judgment. Trust that the frequency you emit is already shaping the timeline before you. And if ever you forget, return to the silence beneath the sound, the space before intention, and listen. The universe is still there, whispering the same truth it always has. You were never waiting for your reality. Your reality was waiting for you. Stay coherent, stay simple, stay awake.